Okay, now we're ready. Um, One of the things with this recording, I was going through the Outdoor Therapy Center's YouTube page. I think this is our 38th Social Sciences Week presentation this year, which is only in 4.5, 5 years or something, which just seemed really amazing to me because it shows something about how wonderful our community is. That is 38 hours of free things to listen to and to meet people in our field. So I get really jazzed about sharing everything. I remember when I went to Norway and for my PhD research, and I was driving with our friend Leif, who unfortunately passed away, and we were driving out to go on this wilderness therapy program in Norway. And I said to Leif, it's actually kind of amazing that, like, I'm kind of a critical asshole, and you are bringing me out here onto your program. It's amazing. And Leif said, well, Will, our motto is share everything. It's like Google, just share everything. Like if you got nothing to hide, you'll learn something by sharing everything with people. And it just stuck with me for the last, that was 2017. He said that to me, and it rattled me as, yeah, we got nothing to hide, and sharing things with your friends and with people that are really keen learners is amazing. So, um, thanks everyone for joining, and thanks to all the people who have presented. And I know we've got another day of this, but thanks for everybody who's come along. So today I'm speaking with my friend Max. You will see there are times that Max and Will dress the same, look the same, and the way Max and I met, we were in Norway, 2022, 2023, 2022, I think. Whatever. We were in
Yeah.
Norway, and um, and we were having a coffee outside of Max's van with Stefan, who presented yesterday, and and we were sitting there, and someone came up to us, and it was quite an unsafe situation, and it was awkward and a bit uncomfortable. And I saw this knife on the table that we were using to open things and cook and stuff. And it was quite an awkward situation. And I just reached down and nonchalantly picked up the knife, put it in my pocket because I didn't want this to get into an uncomfortable, out of hand situation. And the person walked away. Everything was fine. We all calmed down. And Max said to me, Will, did you work in residential treatment? Because you removed that knife invisibly, and I was looking at the same thing. Have we been trained the same way? Max and I have both worked in wilderness therapy. And so then we hit it off that we had so many commonalities, and we'll talk a little bit about this. Max and I have even done research with the same methodology for basically the exact same reason and didn't know about it until we met. So I love presenting with Max. As Stefan says, this is Australian Max, that is Spanish Will, and they're both now kind of considered half American. So thanks for doing this, Max. I don't know if you want to introduce yourself quickly.
Well, I think I'll do it as I go over my part, but
Yeah, we'll keep going.
keep it going.
Okay, let's keep going. So, this idea of
Oh, wait, well,
pilgrimage.
maybe Will, sorry. That photo, by the way, that first photo,
One
that's
second.
from that's from Norway, from where we met.
Yes. And Nevin is just to the left, and we are driving in Max's van to go to a conference. And I said, if you're giving a free lift, I'll go with you, but I had to sit in the boot, basically. Yeah. All right.
Okay.
So this topic of a pilgrimage is fascinating. Um, One of the things is I probably, in some way, I came across this idea of pilgrimage in sort of a roundabout way, really accidentally. I talked to my mentor, Scott Miller, and I said, "What book should I read?" That I was feeling really burnt out. I said, "What book should I read that I haven't read?" And he recommended this book by Sheldon Kopp. I think it's from 1972, and it's called "If You Meet the Buddha on the Road, Kill Him." And the notion is that when we're as the therapist, we think we have this thing to offer other people. But the truth is, we're just also another struggling soul on a journey to make meaning from anything. Um, and the book, I loved it. I actually brought it to Norway, and I lent it to Unda from Latvia to read, and I never got it back. So she stole my book. So, but I loved the book, which was about things like humans being just natural, meaning-making people. Another book I had read, there's a 1993 edition of it that really helped me with my research, but there's a new version now. It is a bit pricey because the book is this freaking thick. But Persuasion and Healing, a comparative study of psychotherapy, is one of my absolute favorite books where it just grounds therapy in culture. And as a social worker, many people talk to me cultural responsiveness, be culturally competent. And I didn't get any training about actually all of this therapy stuff and mental health stuff is a cultural endeavor, which you can actually you can take therapy and actually really um, fan the flame of the meaning making process by linking this with culture. And one thing I started thinking is we have done in some way, and this might be strong words, but like we have done violence to the phenomena of um, meaning making and psychotherapy by stripping it of culture and pretending that everything is neuroscience and super scientific and brain scans and all of these ideas where the truth is many of these concepts that we do in therapy are deeply cultural. So that sort of started me on a pilgrimage of the research. So this is a bit more Sheldon Kopp that the psychotherapy patient will have to learn to fend for himself, to become a lonely wayfarer whose whole life becomes one long transforming pilgrimage. Being in treatment may show him the way he is to journey, but it will be up to him to reclaim his salvation continually by remaining on the march for the rest of his life. So there's this notion of we're all trying to make meaning out of things. That's sort of what the pilgrimage is. So if we think of outdoor therapy for a second, one of the things that's fascinating is you look at this picture of people walking on this trail. It's just dirt, rocks, and trees. If you add, let's say, a Japanese cultural perspective of forest therapy, we're going to start thinking about how the trees are impacting our well-being. We're going to think about the meaning we attach to all objects. If we zoom out and go to, let's say, a more Australian viewpoint, we might think of connection to country. We also might start thinking about conquering things and challenging ourselves and pushing ourselves to succeed in the trail. Culture impacts the way that we view different places. If we zoom up to Scandinavia, we might think of friluftsliv and think about things like an open air lifestyle, that this area is to be shared but from everyone. So culture does impact the way we think of the natural world and how we have a relationship to it. Our lived experience adds to that natural, how we think about the natural world. I grew up going to summer camp. So when it came to wilderness therapy work and being away in the woods for, a month or in Alaska, 52 days, if it comes to anything, it doesn't bug me. I love being away. I love that experience. And so it's also related to ourselves and our own lived experience. So but one of the interesting things, and where I think this can really help psychotherapy, and I say psychotherapy, that's my own Americanism. Any type of helping professional, whether you're counseling, a paraprofessional, someone working in outdoor ed who's working for therapeutic purposes, I'm just going to use the word psychotherapy, fit into that as you wish. One of the things is we've started turning, and this is probably because we all live in sort of we've put the capitalist umbrella onto therapy and mental health. Everything is about the destination. Go to therapy, get this treatment for these goals, and you'll be better. Where what Sheldon Kopp was saying in the 70s about kill the Buddha was if the Buddha is inside of you, run away from anybody who claims to be the Buddha. So the person that claims they can help you make meaning from something, the truth is we should be on the journey and someone should be a trusted guide helping facilitate and consolidate the meaning that you're making from that experience. So I think this is such a wonderful metaphor for the psychotherapy world. Um, So I brought up earlier that we talk about therapy as this cultural endeavor. So the truth is, when we think of therapy in general, we often think therapy has evolved because of scientific advancements. The truth, nothing could be further from the truth. Therapy has not, the outcomes have not changed in over, we're getting close to half a century. We have not seen 1% improvement in outcomes. And that's because we're probably counting the wrong thing. We're not looking at human beings, at meaning making, and at culture. So take Freud's psychoanalysis for a second. The patient lays down, stares at the ceiling, and Freud interprets their dreams, talks about their mother, the id, the ego, the superego. No eye contact. The therapist is a mirror, right? This makes sense in Austria in the late 1800s, early 1900s, in a patriarchal society where men don't talk about their feelings. So, what's a great way to talk about your feelings? Free associations. Just talk until something meaningful happens. Talk to me about your dreams. This made sense. When psychoanalysis crossed the Atlantic Ocean to America, and Americans being a little bit more oppositional, what they did is they said, I'm not laying down. I'm going to talk to you face to face. We're going to make eye contact. Some cultures, eye contact is an odd way to communicate with people. It's just a different cultures have view talking in different ways. So psychoanalysis is just a deeply cultural tradition of the time that it came from. Look at Carl Rogers and humanism and post World War II, where you have the rise of hippies. People are going to India and other becoming informed by other Eastern spiritual traditions, bringing that back to America. So you have a rise of mindfulness. You have a rise of these cultural traditions. Now, what happens with mindfulness, which I think is it's a bit of an issue, is it was stripped away of all the culture. So what happens is it comes and then it's a neuroscientific mindfulness stress-based reduction. And we've lost all the richness of where these ideas came from. So in the Cold War, when everyone's moving nuclear weapons around, we see strategic therapy emerge. As divorce rates start to increase, we see family therapy start to emerge. Um, Wellness culture, we see mindfulness. So there's also parts that we cannot escape of the human tradition, like retail therapy, the hairdresser, the bartender, all of these different accidental counselors that are really important. So one of the things when Max and I really started talking about this together was there are um, some commonalities between pilgrimages in the cultural sense and psychotherapy, which I would argue is not too different to what Sheldon Kopp was saying in his writing, which really is this idea that every human comes with an assumptive world. So we can think the most likely religion you are to believe in is the one you were born into. So from an early age as an infant, we are taught we are slowly creating meaning and belief structures and the way we think of the world. That's our assumptive world. Now, in psychotherapy, that can get us, when we wind up in psychotherapy, it's because our assumptive world might be getting us into a bit of trouble. So we go, okay, I need to go talk to someone, I need to go on a journey. And so changing the assumptive world is part of the common goal of psychotherapy. So think about cognitive behavioral therapies, change your thinking, that's how we'll get better. That's this idea very simply. And there's tons of stuff out there about the assumptive world. You can think of it in many ways as very similar to psychological schemas that people have. And so how these change based on our experiences. So if we believe that people have this essential meaning making assumptive world, we also we're looking at how does a pilgrimage, how does the therapeutic intervention, how do all these things, what are the commonalities? So for many people that wind up on a pilgrimage, there's a trusted guide. Many people who wind up in therapy, there's a trusted guide. There's some sort of therapeutic relationship and a socially designated healer. What makes it so anybody thinks Will is the right person to work with their child? Yeah, it's because someone gave me university degrees. And then people go, yep, you're right now to do this. So there's some socially designated view to this. When it comes to religion and a spiritual trail, there's some sort of trusted guide as well. There's a priest, there's a medicine man, there's a cult leader, there's some sort of trusted guide to lead the way. There's also a rationale or explanation that makes sense of someone's suffering. In Christianity, we talk about original sin. Nowadays, in our, pseudoscientific world, everyone has trauma. But 20 years ago, everybody had a chemical imbalance. 100 years ago, people had lesions in the brain. We have a story about what's wrong with them that makes sense on then to get certain rituals, practices that are to heal the thing that's wrong with them, right? So think about mindfulness. Well, if we believe the cognitive behavioral story that it's your thinking, the way you're thinking about certain events that's getting you in trouble, well, we can teach you how to quiet your thinking brain through challenging cognitive distortions, thinking about mindfulness. Look at nature-based therapies. Again, going back to the forest therapy view, there's a notion that being in and amongst the trees, going to um, regulated forest therapy parks is going to be good for you. There's also things like a ritual or set of practices. Think about Alcoholics Anonymous meetings or narcotics, any of the anonymous meetings. You are powerless. So you come to this meeting every day, and then look what you're surrounded by, a community or social validation that affirms this view of what you're doing. So we can see these kind of commonalities across all the therapies. And so that's where this idea of pilgrimage is such a wonderful one. And so in psychotherapy, we think of the pilgrimage as this metaphorical, structured process. And think about this in therapy. Everything is a performance in therapy. The client comes in, they sit in a waiting room or something, they go into your office, you've got diagrams of the brain, you have your degrees on the wall, you got books, so it looks like you've read a lot, so it looks like you're really smart. And then you start the work of this talking, and it comes across as this meaning making process that has challenges, rituals, encounters, but it all has to have some sort of personal or cultural significance. And so I think, and as I pass to Max, I think that the pilgrimage is actually one of the most wonderful metaphors for therapy, for what we do, how we conceptualize our work. And so when we got together and started talking about these ideas, um, it was something that we just didn't let go and kept thinking about. And with that, Max, I'm going to pass over to you.
All right. Thank you, Will. Okay, so I'll start talking a little bit, picked up from where you left it off in terms of pilgrimage and psychotherapy. I'd say um, the definition of pilgrimage is a practical version of what you just said. It's a journey in which a person undertakes a purposeful voyage, physical, emotional, spiritual, towards greater self-understanding and personal growth and all that. And so that's it makes it quite a perfect match in terms of uh, of what you're saying, Will. And so there's various examples of pilgrimage throughout the ages, throughout different types of religions, or also non-secular journeys like long distance hikes as the Appalachian Trail or the Pacific Crest Trail in the US, or the Transpirinaica, the GR11 in Spain. And so there's those are some types of different examples of pilgrimages. But today we'll talk about the Camino de Santiago, which is probably one of the most known, definitely one of the most studied pilgrimages, and also one that, for what I'm going to be talking about, is quite of interest, being in Spain, and operating and based in Spain. So the Camino de Santiago is a traditionally Christian pilgrimage culminating in kind of the northwest of Spain in a region called Galicia. And originally, it's a journey to go visit the supposed remains of Saint James in the Cathedral of Santiago de Compostela. But and it's been going on. I think the first accounts are from like the ninth, 10th century. But in 1980, around the 1980s, it started to do a shift towards simply just reaching Santiago de Compostela to see those remains, to a voyage kind of that emphasized this process of journey. And it became as well significant, heavily significant to others that were not religious, or for non-religious reasons. And so also an interesting fact is there's you'd say the most known or traditional Camino, which is from San John Pied de Ports in the Pyrenees to Santiago de Compostela. But there's also so many different variations of it. There's actually a saying in Spain that says the real Camino starts at home, because, for example, I've done one where I've left my home in Madrid and gone to Santiago, and a lot of people do that as well. In terms of if there's one that comes from the south of Spain, one that goes more through the mountains. So there's all these types of variations, which, for practical reasons of facilitating caminos, as we'll talk about later, also brings a lot of interesting stuff. And so what what interested me about the Camino, or where I came from this, and this is where I'll talk a little bit about my story, was I grew up in Madrid, Spain. My father's from here, from Spain, but my mother's from the US, from Minnesota. And my life journey took me to study. Ended up studying psychology at the University of Minnesota, and getting into the whole outdoor therapy, wilderness therapy, outdoor guiding world there. And after spending about 6, 7 years working in Montana, Vermont, different areas in the US, ended up finding myself back home in Spain and in Europe, and facilitating trainings and developing programs here in Spain. And kind of one thing that I really was trying to do is some of that stuff that I learned in the US in a practical way, kind of try to dive deeper into the why it is, and how it could be better adapted to the Spanish culture and context. Because even just as in physical spaces, it's quite different from the Rocky Mountains or and stuff like that. There's not that much vastness. There's not that much tradition of outdoor backpacking journeys, and legally even it's a little bit harder to find permission to camp out and to do those kind of more outdoor journeys in that way. And so that took ended up taking me to the University of Edinburgh, where I studied the master's in outdoor education. Luckily, before Brexit, so the fees were just as if we were from the UK. And it was a great experience. It was a wonderful experience there. Learned so much. Really got to dive deep into my practice through the different theoretical lenses. Shifted a lot of my practice because of it, and definitely I think it served that goal. And then when it came towards the end, and deciding what to do for my master's dissertation, um, I was kind of kept on coming back to, okay, how can I make this more significant, relevant, interesting to people in Spain? And that's when I came across, and it just kind of kept on popping up, the Camino de Santiago voyages, right? Because in Spain they're quite known. It's known all over the world, but still the most of the people that do it are from Spain, and so it's quite embedded in the Spanish culture. And then so I came when it came time to do the research, I was like, all right, let's go find out. Let's go find out this idea. Let's go test it. Let's go do some research and see what Spanish young adults actually think about the Camino, what the people around them think about it, and what are their motivations, what do they expect to get out of it, and what do they get out of it. And so so that was quite of a yeah, I was quite ahead at set. So when I went to my supervisor, Simon Beams, I was like, all right, Simon, this is what I want to do. And of course, he, being the good academic he is, he kind of pushed me critically. And I still was like, I think this is it. Yeah. He's like, all right, you got it. And that's when I came across that methodology of research methodology of narrative inquiry. As we said, that Will ended up doing his research on it too. That was quite, yeah, part of the parallel lives we've lived from skateboarding to punk music to narrative inquiry.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing to add about narrative inquiry, which was an accidental choice on my part to this methodology, is as a research method, it's all informed by um, John Dewey's view of experience and experiential. So the idea is how people actually make meaning from their experience, from their lived experience, and what these ideas really mean. So as a research method, it really interests me, as I'm sure it did you, Max, that it wasn't as common in the world of outdoor therapy or outdoor education, where we're leaning on this philosopher about experience, how people make meaning from outdoor ed, why we should think about experiential education. And but this methodology was really good at capturing these concepts of how this changes the story people tell about themselves. This is how is a research method looking at how people change their assumptive world that I was talking about earlier. Sorry, Max, back to you.
No, that's perfect. And that's what I was going to talk about a little bit more about, especially, yeah, just about that view, Dewey's view on experience and the notions of continuity and interaction and how, um, exactly, and how what and that's all you said, Will. I totally agree on. And in my case, specifically, in what I was trying to research, one thing that I love is that it really took into account, it takes account the temporality, place, and the social aspect, the people around, and the general cultural context in which our stories are in. And so that really interests me because it asks how greater social contexts really shape experiences, and that came really to be of interest when thinking about, okay, why do people do this? What is it around? And because I was looking at all that, and also it meant that I had to go do a Camino because I had to go be embedded in the experience as well. So I really enjoyed that. Um, and and to do that, I was trying to figure out what kind of Camino to do. Obviously, if I were to do the French one, that's when most people go on. But me being me, I was like, well, I think I'd like one that was a little bit more challenging, a little bit more remote, just because that's what I kind of feel like doing. And I found it that maybe the people I would interact with there would be a more of yeah, just kind of interest for the research aspect. So I went on a 10-day Camino Primitivo, which is another variant to go to Santiago, which goes through the mountains of Asturias, starts in Oviedo and goes to Lugo, and then it connects with the French. So I did 9 days hiking and one day just staying in Lugo, interviewing some more hikers, some more pilgrims. And the first 3 days, it was a rough start because I had this target of 8 to 10 Spanish young adults going from spanning from 18 to 30 years old, and to interview and dive deep into their experiences. And as the first 3 days, I was like, oh shoot, I'm not finding any. This is all right. I guess I just got to change my research, and I'm just gonna hike this Camino and then figure it out later. And I don't know, meet people somewhere, and then by the fourth day, it was just like magic. I ended up being sharing a bunch of time. The albergues, the municipal hostels that are for the Camino pilgrims, and and just became part of this lovely group. And about like five or six of them ended up being participants in the research because they fit the bill, as they say. And then I added on with the ones at Lugo, and it was so nice, so neat, and that actual part, and then the data analysis was also quite fun, going over through the recordings and through these really neat conversations, and hearing their stories of why they were doing it, who was involved in their decision, what they thought they were going to get into, how was the experience actually going, and going through reliving all that hiking in Barcelona. And a lot of the recordings were done as we were hiking, so I could really like hike at the same pace as I'm jotting down notes on the thematic analysis. And then came the dreadful part of for me of writing it, which was quite a journey in itself. But again, it was just so neat to dive into what they were saying, then dive into the theory. And here in this photo, you can see that's the exact moment where I click send on Moodle to send in my dissertation. And I had a little celebratory single malt Scotch whiskey. And I don't really drink anymore, but in that moment, that was a way of honoring and closing my Edinburgh experience. And again, so that was a lot of fun. Some of the main takeaways were that all participants had a meaningful Camino experience, for which was something was gained, and for some of them unexpectedly, because at the beginning there's I'm just going to go for fun, and then so there was some unexpected kind of meaningful insights taken from it. And also, most participants spoke about how the Camino was a place of introspection and reflection, space to contemplate deeply about their life, and being able to separate themselves from everyday life, and kind of be able to look at what they were doing from a distance, and maybe some hard things from a little bit of distance, which they found to be useful. And I'm just sharing some of the findings for what the talk of this or for this talk. Some of it maybe is not so relatable, or we could go deep into it, of like, okay, well, what are the mechanisms and stuff like that. But I'm just going to share them a little bit. Um, yeah, just kind of from above. Most participants talked about the Camino as a journey or metaphor for life. So again, it's kind of like what Will was saying of the definition of pilgrimage and psychotherapy, and kind of that, uh, yeah, that journey, and then just in life in general, and in different languages, right? There's a fork in the road, finding my north, all this. There's a lot of these similarities between life as a journey and actual journeys. And hmm, and then it's also the Camino it's been described as I love this quote. Will liked it too when I shared it with him. A metaphor bonanza. And metaphors are bountiful on the Camino experience. And now here comes the question of, is it because are they innate because of that life is journey kind of thing? Or are they because other people have said you can find a lot of metaphors from the Camino, or they've heard other metaphors from the Camino, and then they're already predisposed for it? So these are some of the interesting questions that link back to meaning making and culture. And all participants, one another interesting part was that all participants had heard accounts of previous hikers' experiences prior to embarking on their first Camino. In most cases, it was these others who motivated them to do it in the first place. Some of them were family members, some of them were just random person they met that at one moment told them, of like, oh, you should go on the Camino, or I know someone who's done this in the Camino. and it seemed like it played a big role in how participants framed their own experiences. And 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 this is as well can be linked. And one thing that was interesting is how media representations are believed to play a role in framing these types of pilgrimages and traveling. In terms of like Paulo Coelho has a book, The Pilgrim. There's been a couple movies around this or ones on the Pacific Crest Trail and and all these things that through the media we read and we hear and it's like okay, so this is a space of transformation or a meaningful space, and that can link back to well, I know we've talked about pre-treatment changes and
Yeah, one of the things that happens and this was an interesting study, there's been a few of them, but when it comes to pre-treatment changes is when someone signs up to do something, and this comes from the psychotherapy literature. So when they did this study once. This is by Matthew Seligman. And what they did is Matthew Seligman, when a parent would call and say, I need my kid to come see a therapist, the receptionist would say, yeah, we've got a 2 week wait list. It's very busy. We're incredibly busy here. And so, right off the bat, what does that tell the client? This is special. It's special that we can fit you in. And they said, we're really busy. And but we could see you in 2 weeks. But in the meantime, Matthew will need a list of, since this phone call, all the things that are starting to change in the right direction. We have found some research that indicates that actually, after making an appointment, there's a lot of changes before that appointment. So you have 2 weeks to do this. 80% canceled their appointment because they were already on the journey of making the change. They were already starting to look for the meaning that was happening all around them. So pre-treatment changes in therapy is something that you can work on. What has changed since you decided to come on this journey? Which is, how have you gotten ready? What's your sense of expectancy? All of this is kind of very placebo-ish, right? How am I going to see the healing happen from going on this journey? And you've taken a lot of people, Max, on different caminos, right?
yeah, I've taken so I'll go through two examples now here.
Yeah.
One is because from my research I was like some of the insights I got were okay, or the conclusions were this, right? Like what we've talked about, that they already see it as a place for change, which could come with pre-treatment changes. Um, that others around them see it, find it significant. So one of the things as well was thinking about like, okay, well, if a person goes on this journey, does this transformation per se, or has these insights, has these changes of assumptions, and then goes back to their everyday life, and that's socially validated by people in their home context because those people see it as a space for transformation, and they see like, oh, okay, yeah, it's normal. He came back, that person came back, and she's changed, and she's gonna do things different now, or she sees the world differently because I also have an uncle who had done it, right? Or it's so it's already the ground is more fertile to accept that growth in that the new assumptions and new ways of being in the world, and that mixed with as well, it's like especially with that comparison of like someone, if you tell someone from Spain going on a Camino journey or going on a week long hiking in a big circle and learning about myself in nature, but hiking in a big circle, sharing and going to the bathroom in a hole in the ground, and it's kind of that difference in terms of how people around no, because you can go and you can have this wonderful insight experience, but then go back and try to explain it to people, and they're like, "All right, I think I kind of know what you mean," but and so that was kind of one of the big insights from it. And so again, I'll kind of run through this a little bit quick, Will. I think we got well, that stuff was interesting too. So, but I got a little maybe took a little too much time on that
No, no,
research
no.
part.
Go for 10 minutes and tell your stories, and we can have a conversation. This is great.
All right. So, so you guys can tell I'm not so used to doing this podcast video presentation stuff. I'm a little bit more used to going walking and facilitating experiences with people. So one of these was went for a walk with professionals in a personal development program. And we did the Camino Portugués, so the Portuguese one, which means it comes from Portugal. We actually did the last week, which already starts in Spain, but it's called the Portuguese Camino because it comes from there. And they were on a personal social growth program we had set up. And there, my role was like, okay, I'm gonna go with these people, and I've got my usual things that I do, right, when I'm facilitating groups and meaningful, significant experiences through experiential learning and outdoor therapy style. And okay, so. But here I'm going to try to make it as an authentic Camino experience. Thinking about that experiential, right? Like, okay, if we're going to be in this venue, how can I do it to where they're really having the most experience, most authentic pilgrim experience? And so the way about doing that was like we would come up, there'd be two arrows, we go this way, that way, and it'd be like one participant, I think in one moment asked, okay, which way do I go, right or left? And I said, well, where do you think we should go? Where do you think the way is? And that's just like one little example about, coming back to the giving participants choice, which also happens in other outdoor therapy and outdoor therapeutic spaces. And and that ended up to be a meaningful conversation through there, or choosing where to eat, and then having some issues arise from it, from that participants' expectations, and then sharing that with the group. And so, just all these little things to try to make it as authentic as possible. And it was great. They all had meaningful experience from it, and I also learned quite a lot on how to facilitate these type of experiences versus kind of more wild mountain journeys. And one of them was it can be difficult to find spaces just for the group to share and kind of that more intimate space and hold that space when you're using kind of more in public areas or and stuff like that.
You want me to go to the
And
next
then
one?
yeah, well,
You want me to go to the next one?
yeah. Oh, and it was metaphor bonanza at its finest. Participants,
Metaphorical
all kinds
banana.
of metaphors. Okay. All right. And so this is a photo from a month-long journey I did with this young folk, young adult. He was struggling with addiction and very low self-esteem. It was together with Alex Rose and Christiane from Germany, and I was facilitating the whole experience, and I was free to organize the experience and logistics as I wanted. And so again, I was like, okay, well, let's take it as well to the Camino. And I talked to him previously, and we kind of set up what to do. He also wanted a little bit more of that mountain experience, so we went off started doing a week-long adventure, bivvying through the Picos de Europa area, which is a beautiful area in the north of Spain. And that was more kind of the traditional learning to be comfortable in the land and to use map and compass and that kind of stuff and um, gain self-efficacy and all that through those learning different outdoor yeah way being comfortable in the outdoors, getting that success from that. And kind of really just that space and beautiful views, beautiful natural area and all that brings. And then from there, we moved on to the Camino Primitivo, which is the one that I did during my research. And that was interesting because we started interacting with other pilgrims. There was different challenges. The days hiking were a little bit longer because it's longer distances, not such rough terrain, not so much elevation change. And one thing that was interesting too is that we followed Camino arrows. So on the Camino, there's it's you follow these signs that tell you, okay, the path is this way. Sometimes it's you can either choose right or left, right? But in the most part, you can follow these arrows. So that allowed us, since he was an adult, we could hike separately and then meet up and reflect about our day because it wasn't being in the mountains. Sometimes you gotta, or most of the time, you gotta make sure you know where the participant is because there's all kinds of decision making and risks out there that they're a lot difficult, more difficult to mitigate. And and so during these hikes in the Camino, you end up going a lot through towns, and that's where you fill your water, you eat, and he had his own money as well to buy food if needed. And so it was interesting because in this way, the space in comparison, and again, this is coming from being a mountain guide, working in outdoor therapy programs, outdoor education programs, personal social development programs, through experiential learning in more mountain outdoors aspect. And and in that space, normally we end up being more of an expert. And like, yeah, we show them all these skills and we help them so they make decisions and stuff. But in the end, we do need to be a that outdoor expert. And in this way, since that is a little bit softened, he could spend the day again hiking by himself, and that gave him, I think, a lot of more like individuality, independence, and really made his journey his a lot more. And then we would just go and share and then make meaning from what was lived. And we also did from there we did a couple days of whitewater kayaking, experiencing success and mastery, learning something new, and there was came across a theme that came across our journey together was that he started breaking that assumption, that view that he sucked at everything. He sucked at learning new things, sorry. And so all these experiences on the Camino and doing these outdoor, like the kayaking, um, help with that. And then so from there, we went on to do, and it was just the two of us. Right around that time, we also had a little bit of relational difficulties, which ended up creating a stronger therapeutic bond. Um, we then moved on to doing the last 100 kilometers of the French Camino. And as I mentioned before, that is the most popular and where most people are doing it. And so we ended up meeting a lot more people. And that was so neat because it was after spending all this time together. He saw he had these new insights of how he wanted to be in the world, how he was going about his consumption of cocaine. You know, he didn't use it by the time we were there in the period before, of course, but kind of changing his thoughts on all that and how to go about it and realizing that that if he struggles, he could still do it and that kind of things. And what was interesting by that point, now he's interacting with others in this, and he's able to do it from this new kind of view of himself, this new narrative, and and realizing that one of the things he mentioned in our reflections was like, I'm not alone. You know, there's other people are doing this journey for personal growth and for change and are struggling and are using this as healing. And so I think that was really strong for him because he could actually physically share. Um, and so yeah, I think that was it. It really I reflected upon with him and then by myself and with Will about how having the journey start more remote, less people, and then having more pilgrims on the same journey really helped him with going back home. And I felt that in terms of when I do more programs like this is definitely an aspect that I would like to continue. Um, and really again that being it being more social, more urban, I think it helped him transition to his everyday context. So, and conclusions are from my experience in the research and facilitating these experiences and others on the Camino, is that it definitely is in Spain an appropriate, culturally meaningful experience for young people and adults as well. And I learned a lot of practical things and kind of therapeutic foreign affordances that I didn't realize at the beginning. Um,
Awesome.
yeah.
Oh, thanks, Max. That's so good. It's so cool to think about, I was just thinking if I went back to, just give me 1 second. And, so if we go to this slide, you think about there is a trusted guide with this young person. There is a cultural explanation as to why we're doing this ritual. And when you get to the place where there's other people, there's a social validation, this community of pilgrims all around us, all on this journey. And I'd say in many ways, this can be a richer, and I don't want to say better, but as far as meaning making, it can be a richer way of how we, destigmatize mental health care and therapy, that it's something that everybody else has done this, so you can do this too. Where many ways in the Western view of mental health, it's behind closed doors, don't talk about it. There's this shame associated with it, where there's ways to bring therapy to the community that's really important. And John texted me while you were talking, Max, and then we'll stop recording and we can have a conversation together. That we also really want to think about that we don't know, even though we're the trusted guide, the socially designated healer, at the same time, we also don't know what meaning the client is making. So we don't want to
Mhm.
say, you finish this. Doesn't this mean how strong you are? Like we don't want to apply our assumption of meaning onto them. We're there as the trusted guide to see what meaning comes out of things.
Mhm.
For sure. Max, that was awesome. That was really good. Is there any final thought you'd like to add before we stop recording and have a conversation?
Yeah, so when I share this with people, this idea, people are like, yeah, but why the Camino? Isn't that religious? Isn't that, it's not even that like that hardcore of an outdoor adventure thing. Because I think a lot of times people think that we do that, and be- and the reason is because the meaning participants and others around them hold about that space and that journey, and because it is seen as a journey towards healing, growth. That's why.
It's
But
awesome. Yeah, absolutely. It's the meaning we apply to it.